So good afternoon to everybody. Fest 3 coming towards its conclusion. 2 more presentations to go. This one, delighted to be joined by Petar Modev, who's going to speak about the relationship between the P&I Club and the Marine Surveyor. Petar joined Thomas Miller as Loss Prevention Executive in 2014. He's now Head of Ship Inspections, in which capacity he coordinates the Conditions Survey Scheme for the UK P&I Club and provides technical and loss prevention advice to members. He's an ex-mariner and has previously worked at sea up to the rank of Chief Officer for more than 8 years. His main area of expertise lies in tankers and offshore operations. So what I said earlier, we heard from a representative from the Standard Club. I think it's very valuable to have P&I clubs talking to surveyors and vice versa. And I think the topic today is particularly relevant. And thank you very much for stepping up to deliver it, Petar. Over to you.
First of all, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for inviting me to this wonderful event. It's really appreciated, and it's actually both ways. It's the clubs as well that we are delighted to be able to speak to our surveyors. Unfortunately, not in person on this occasion, but hopefully things will start changing in this respect. So, as Mike said, I would be talking today about the relationship between the P&I Club and the Marine Surveyors. That's a brief overview of my presentation. So, first of all, I would speak about why P&I Clubs appoint surveyors. Then just do a brief overview of the types of P&I surveys that we do. Then I'll talk about what we do when we choose a surveyor. Then how are we evaluating our surveyor's performance, and then some do's and don'ts. And at the end, I'll address the elephant in the room, of course, COVID-19. So when I was preparing this presentation, I pondered a bit on what I should be talking. And initially I started in quite a bit of detail on what different surveys involved. But then I actually realized that most of you guys have a lot more experience than I do in terms of marine surveying. So I decided not to try and teach grandma to suck eggs. And even the topic wasn't exactly talking about the surveys themselves, but more about the relationship. And that is what I am hoping will be helpful to some of you. So first of all, why we appoint surveyors? First and foremost, it's about establishing facts and gathering evidence. And I'll stress on facts here. That is literally the most essential role of the marine surveyor, to establish the facts. So we do that in a number of ways, obviously. So first of all, when we talk about loss prevention surveys, we do that in terms of doing condition surveys, for example, on board our ships when we have newly entered ships, or we have some concerns about the vessel's quality in specific fleets, and is basically to support the club's underwriting decision, whether we take on the risk, whether we insure that member, or whether we need to impose certain conditions on the member to do certain repairs aboard their ships or not. Secondly, as far as establishing facts is concerned, is when it's related to an incident or a claim. Obviously, the majority of the surveys that you would do would be claims related. Now, this is, as Mike mentioned, my capacity is working for the loss prevention department and coordinating the condition type surveys. So I'm not really involved with appointing surveyors when it comes to a claim or an incident. And this is something that it's routinely done by my colleagues in the claims department or by our correspondents. But I will address obviously the issue with incidents and claims and appointing surveyors on these occasions. Now, The second cause of appointing surveyors is for them to give advice on causation of the incident after establishing the facts, of course. We also need a surveyor to evaluate the loss or damage caused by an incident and to give us an estimate on the cost of the repairs. Now, this evaluation is extremely important. So together with the advice on causation, this forms part of the estimate that we will put on a claim. And as a lot of claims take a bit of time to develop for more complicated collisions and, well, casualties in general, it might take a few years by the time the claim has been settled or resolved or has gone through courts, if that is the case. So it is very important for us to have an early indication on what caused the claim. The lawyers, based on that, will give us an estimate on the liability. So who takes what proportion of that cost? And then we need an evaluation of what the claim would cost us in order for us to put the correct estimate for that claim, in order for us to charge the correct premium next year from each of our members. So giving an early and accurate estimate on the loss, on the damage caused, the cost of repairs, and the causation, which would lead to, of course, liabilities. It's basically something that is essential to the service that we as insurance company provide. In addition, we need surveyors to advise on, if, for example, we are talking about life casualty, we might need some advice on possible solutions of issues that currently the ship is having. This might be a lot of different things, and we might need them to advise us on what mitigating actions we might take, or the member might take, our ship owner might take, to reduce the cost of the damage. We need sometimes surveyors to provide us with technical advice in their areas of expertise. This might be, well, it can range for various issues, from, let's say, some charter party technical issue that we need to resolve with the charterers. It might be something to do with a particular cargo that our members are not well aware of, or we might need a feedback from, let's say, a chemist or a proper cargo surveyor to look into that and give us an advice on. And last but not least, we need surveyors to act as expert witnesses during court proceedings. So it is indeed an important role, and surveyors are something that P&I clubs rely heavily on in our daily work, and I would go as far as say surveyors are essential to the industry and our business. Now about the different types of surveys. So very generally, you would probably find a number of ways to kind of separate or divide the different types of surveys. This is my version on it. So somebody might propose something different, but very broadly, P&I surveys can be divided into different topics: loss prevention surveys and claims related surveys. So under loss prevention, I consider condition type surveys, which I will tell you a bit more about. And this is mainly what I do on a daily basis in the club. And other precautionary surveys, such as they mainly involve different cargoes that we have seen in the past causes a lot of claims. So a good examples of some of those are finished steel products. So these claims tend to be fairly expensive, and we have a policy, and I think majority of the P&I clubs, IG P&I clubs, have a policy to do precautionary finished steel product surveys during loading, when a surveyor will attend on board and help the master to kind of monitor the loading, see if there is any issues with the steel cargo being loaded, and then help him close the bills of lading. so these are generally the two types of loss prevention surveys that we do. In terms of claims related surveys, now there is a wide variety of those. Surveys that are not related to any major incident or casualty are those related to cargo, for example. We have quite a lot of cargo claims, which although might not be very expensive, do take a lot of time to handle. And that's what our claims handlers are doing quite a lot during their daily routine work. So cargo type surveys, when you have shortage or possible contamination or possible quality related claims about the cargoes being discharged, then you might have some machinery or bunker related claims that you will need the surveyor to attend and report on. As far as casualties is concerned, this is the kind of the larger percentage of, well, in terms of cost at least, of our exposure. So these are the claims that cost us most. And these are kind of the surveys that we do, and we need we can't have mistakes on, let's say. So these are the surveys that we really need to do properly. In terms of, as far as casualties are concerned, I'm not talking about just navigational casualties in this case. So these obviously include those. So the incidents such as collisions, groundings, or fixed and floating object type claims when the ship will collide with a crane, will collide with a bird, will damage a fender. I'm talking also about things like fire and explosions on board, heavy weather damage on board, machinery failures, which might result in grounding, collision, or any of the above, pollution, salvage operations, and personal injury claims as well, personal injury and death type claims. We do investigate those as well. So some of the casualties obviously will not just fall into one category, and some of the most complicated casualty scenarios, you will see some of those present. So you might have collision, pollution, salvage, you might have personal injury in one claim, you have machinery failure. So you would have a lot of issues to be looked at, and you would have at one point a lot of surveyors, lawyers, a lot of different people attending on board at the same time, and things might get complicated. People might lose track of who is doing what. So it's very important to have a strict, to have a right idea of what you're doing and what you are responsible for in these scenarios. Like I said, I'll start with the condition type surveys, and I'll talk a bit about those, as these are my main that's my main role with the club. So the goal of these is to ensure the seaworthiness and cargo worthiness of the insured vessels. We have, in terms of scope, I'm sure majority of you have done many of these type surveys. So I will not go in great detail. The scope of the surveys, you have 7 distinct sections that you have to go over. Most of those, so majority of all IG clubs have such scheme. We have an agreement amongst ourselves to do condition surveys, and it's to do with the fact that we don't want to insure vessels that are below certain minimum standard. And this is underpinned by the fact that we pool claims. So we can't have one of the IG groups insuring vessels that are below certain minimum standard. Hence, we insist that every club does this kind of surveys, and we all do. We all have very similar scope. Most of us even have the same form. So 8 of the 13 IG clubs use the same form, UK Club being one of them. Some other have different forms, but the scope is the same, and it covers shipboard management, safe working practices, fire safety and life-saving appliances, pollution prevention, the structural condition of the ship, condition of the machinery and equipment, and also, and this is perhaps a bit different from other type of surveys that, for example, site inspectors do, we also insist on carrying out some operational tests. So things like testing fire pumps, testing quick closing valves, testing emergency power supplies and sources, and so on and so forth. But I'm sure you all know about these. Now I get asked a lot from our surveyors what triggers these condition surveys and when do we need to do them. So the common requirement among all international group clubs is to do condition surveys on all vessels that are newly entered into a club. They might have come from, let's say, another IG club. Irrespective of that, we need to carry out entry surveys on all ships that are newly entered in the club and are older than 12 years. So this is the majority of the surveys that we carry out, new entries on ships older than 12 years. We also have a common policy to survey vessels which have carried HFO cargoes during the last policy year. And we ask our members to submit declarations after each renewal and let us know which of their vessels have carried HFO cargoes. And then if they haven't been surveyed in the last 3 years, we normally carry out inspections on those. Now, this is a policy which we implemented following some of the bigger pollution accidents in the past. Prestige, Erica, you all know about these. But basically, those are behind the reasons why we carry out HFO surveys. And so these two things are the common triggers for condition surveys among each and every of the IG P&I clubs. Now, each club also has another trigger which relates to concerns related to quality of the particular ship and or member. So although this policy is different with the different clubs, how we monitor quality, what are we looking at is different. But so for example, UK club, we have not yet fully automated system, but it's a system that we use. We call it Quality Matrix, and we monitor things like port state control detentions. We have automatic feed from our claims data going to that system. So we monitor claims above a certain amount. So expensive claims, we monitor things like serious fatalities or personal injuries on board. We monitor things like a member of a ship being blacklisted by a particular port state, for example. We monitor things like class withdrawals or suspensions, and so on and so forth. Now, the outcome of these surveys normally is, for UK club, again, different clubs will handle this in a different manner, but we normally, the surveyor will come up with a list of defects. So it is for us to decide what to ask the member to do with those defects. Most of the times we simply send those defects to the member and ask them for rectification actions, report or confirmation that everything's been done properly. Sometimes we would issue managers recommendations in which we will put a specific date by which these deficiencies should be resolved. If the deficiencies are more serious, we will require a follow-up survey, and we will send another surveyor to go on board and make sure that everything's being done as the members have advised us. If a member, so we have one of the rules in our rule book says that every member should comply with the manager's recommendations related to ship inspections. So if a member breaches those recommendations, if they don't comply with, for example, the deadline we have given them, they will be in breach of one of our rules. So being a breach of a rule is quite a serious thing. And basically, if a member is in breach of of this particular rule, it will make their cover discretionary. So basically, all will continue handling their claims, but every claim they have will be discretionary, and whether we cover it or not will be decided not by the managers, by us in the club, but by actually the directors of the club separately. So everything becomes an omnibus rule claim, basically. We have also all the international clubs, group clubs, through the pooling agreement, have also agreed on a, so to speak, nuclear option. If a particular ship is, we call it designated vessel, if a particular ship is in really poor condition, we can designate it and basically notify all the rest of the clubs that they should not insure it. This is in essence what a designated vessel is. There is a complicated procedure how exactly we do that, but I will not be talking now about this. If one of the clubs breaches this agreement and agrees to insure that vessel, then if there is a pool claim involving that vessel, that club will take the double retention for that particular claim for that particular vessel, which is quite a serious thing. So that is it as far as loss prevention claims are concerned. In terms of claims related surveys, first of all, the most common type of surveys that you'd see would be cargo surveys. So this is the majority of the work that the surveyors we employ do. So they, like I mentioned in the beginning, will be related to either quality or condition quality or quantity issues with the cargo at the discharge port. What the role of the surveyor in this particular occasion would be is to ascertain the loss and the damage, basically comment on the nature and cause of the issues, extent and value of the cargo lost, and in a lot of cases we would we would appreciate advice on how we can mitigate that loss. Can we do something with that damaged cargo? Can we salvage it? Can we recondition it so that the members can recover some of their losses? So this is kind of a common illustration of some of the most prominent type of claims. A lot of it relates to water ingress. Like you can see here on the first photo, there is a bulk cargo and some water damage on it, or moisture damage, so the cargo is caked. You see here finished steel products and water ingress. So that cargo was damaged. Another common issue is shifting steel cargoes. We see that time and time again, and like I said, those tend to be quite expensive because they don't just involve damage of the cargo, they often involve serious damage to the ship structures as well. Reefer cargo damage is another issue because reefer cargoes tend to be quite expensive, and if something goes wrong, then it's an expensive claim at the end of the day. There is quite a bit of focus these days with the news of the new COVID vaccine coming up, and a lot of, the industry is looking at the way it will be transported, and there is a lot of talk about cold chain at the moment and how the logistics of all that will work. So this is definitely an interesting topic and something that I'm sure we'll hear a lot more in the next couple of months, no doubt. The other type of surveys that are claims related are to do with machinery and bunker surveys. Most of that, so don't forget that the P&I clubs do not just insure owners, they also insure charterers. So we have the same terms for chartered members as we have for owned members, plus chartered members we have some additional cover. For example, we cover damage to hull liabilities to chartered members against owners who claim for those. For example, if you have a cargo that damages your hull, you can claim against the charterers, and then we will cover that charterer. So in terms of bunker and machinery type issues, which don't necessarily lead to a big casualty, we do cover those. Majority of those would be us acting on behalf of the charterers, those. And they relate to various things, like fuel has been quite a hot topic in the last few years, at least. And we have seen quite a few of these type of claims. You have here something that I had from one of our recent files on a claim that related to some fuel issues and damage to plungers at the fuel pump. You can see here some scratches on the plungers. Other issues that might involve P&I exposure would be fines related to, for example, sulfur content, another hot topic related to bunkers that still we have seen quite a big, well, not big claims really, but a lot going on at the moment, and issues, inquiries and claims. As far as claims though are concerned, our main exposure and the main use of surveyors is related to casualties. So like I said in the beginning, this doesn't all need to be as those in those pictures involving sinking ships, big collisions, groundings and so on and so forth. This might be also simply main engine failure and the vessel being in need of salvage, for example, without anything much happening. But when you get salvage operation involved, especially if the ship is loaded, you have quite expensive claims in some cases. So these are the claims that we have the biggest exposure in terms of costs for the club. We also employ surveyors in their consultancy role, so we often need some technical advice on contractual disputes, for example, between owners and charterers. There might be some issues that we need input from somebody technical, and that's where we'll use surveyors. We'll obviously use them direct for expert opinions and advice in terms of a variety of things. Can be cargo issues, can be machinery issues, technical issues, all sorts of things. And of course, as expert witnesses. So we need them if the case goes to a court hearing, to have a surveyor who ideally has collected the evidence on board, has commented on the causation, to be able also to go and give expert witness evidence in court. So this is again something that we use surveyors often for. So how do we choose surveyors? Well, first of all, of course, is the level of experience, qualification, and the competency. As in every job, you need somebody who has the right qualifications and has the right experience to do it. For the major casualties, you often don't need one particular individual with one particular experience or expertise. You need a team of experts. So for those cases, more often than not, we work with established marine consultancy firms that have the wide area of experience, that have, it might start as something that is navigational issue. So you go and you need a navigational expert, but then it might turn into something where you need input from naval architect, you need input from civil engineer, you need input from marine engineer. So you need to have those people available. And that is why for major casualties, more often than not, we go to a firm that can offer that. Obviously, professional attitude of the surveyor is very important. So we'll need somebody who is unbiased and focused on the facts. And if he needs to well, if he's asked to comment or issue an opinion on something, then he does that. But normally we kind of insist on the surveyor trying to depict the facts of the matter. Now, good reporting, good report writing skills is also important. So it is good if the surveyor that we employ is able to express conclusions clearly and concisely, and also because sometimes the opinion that you will use or that you will issue or your causation report will be read by lawyers who are not technical people. So the report should be written in a manner that even layperson can understand it well and what happened. Timely attendance and reporting is also something that we're looking at. And of course, charging a fee that is fair and reasonable. Now, me saying that, my experience with the UK Co-op, and certainly myself, this is never something that we are particularly concerned about. So charging a fair and reasonable fee is important. Charging the lowest fee was never something that we will consider. It will of course depend who we choose to attend on a particular claim, on the personal experience of the senior claims handler who is involved in the casualty. And this to me makes perfect sense, because some of these claims, casualties can be very stressful. And if you have a good experience with somebody, there is a bond between the claims handler and the surveyor and the lawyers and the team involved. So you kind of go back to the same people if you have a good experience with them. We also have something called surveyor database, and I at least am being asked quite a lot by surveyors that I meet, how they can get on our surveyors database. There is a bit of misconception, I think, there as far as surveyors database is concerned. So everybody who has the right experience and qualifications and sends us a CV will go on that database. Like I said, however, in the beginning, it is a relationship. So we rely very much on our surveyors. We rely very much on their experience, and it's, as every relationship, it goes both ways. So me in particular, I want the surveyors to know also that I will choose them again if they do a good job. So I tend to go back to the same surveying companies that I have been working with in the past, and I would look for new surveyors if somebody didn't do a particularly good job, let's say, in a particular area, or if a ship is in an area where we don't have surveyors. So once you're on the database, then I will talk about this later, the surveyor's performance gets evaluated. And if you keep on doing surveys, you have a recent evaluation on your work. So you will keep getting assignments, but just getting on the database and not doing a survey doesn't do anybody any good. In terms of evaluation of surveys, so first of all, I want to make the distinction between surveys directly appointed by the club or appointed through the club's correspondent. A lot of the smaller claims, smaller type claims, like cargo issues sometimes, and various issues, we will have surveyors attending on board who have been appointed by the club's correspondent. So evaluating their performance is a role of the club's correspondent. So that is something that they do, and that is something that we audit them for. It's something that our correspondent manager would look at when they talk to our correspondents and meet with them. So it's separate from us. Obviously, the principal who appoints you they will be the one to evaluate you as well. It makes perfect sense. So for the surveyors that we as a club appoint directly, the way we kind of evaluate them, surveyors' performance and suppliers' performance in general, not just surveyors, also lawyers and everybody who is a supplier of services to the P&I Club, is something that is on the permanent item on the agenda of all team meetings that we have. So we have a lot of so senior claims directors, for example, meet every week, and this is something, one of the things that they discuss, obviously, in addition to all the live casualty and serious claims that we have. We have a monthly meeting where claims handlers from all syndicates gather, and this is again something that we discuss. Claims file get audited by senior claims directors, so each and every senior claims director in the club has a certain number of claims filed that they audit every year, and this is something again that they look at: surveyors' performance, lower performance, so on and so forth. In terms of loss prevention type surveys, for those we do internal audits. So one of my colleagues will come and audit some of the reports that one of the surveyors have done for me, and vice versa. In terms of, after all that, all those reports, feedback goes into a system, and we have an internal rating for the surveyor's performance, which we consider when we appoint them for the next job. Now I want to talk to some do's and don'ts in terms of what surveyors do when they attend on board and when they submit their reports. First of all, the instructions. So instructions are, I would say, very, very important, and this is something that needs to be specific and clear from the onset, and you need to understand when you attend on board in what purpose you are, what is the reason for your attendance, what is your role, on whose behalf you're attending. So this is something that you need to require from, if a claims handler calls you and appoints you, you need to make clear, because sometimes you might get a general, very general instruction from a claims handler. If that is the case, then you need to inquire exactly what the purpose of your attendance is and what the scope of your survey would be. So when you get that instructions, what you have to consider is, first of all, is it within the range of your competence? You might be, for example, a very good marine engineer with a lot of years of experience and surveying experience as well. But for example, if you're met with obviously something that is you don't have experience with, for example, one of the new, I don't know, dual fuel engines, you might not know enough, and the claims handler who is appointing you might not have the technical understanding to kind of know that they should not be instructing you. But that is something that you need to raise with them, obviously. Is there a conflict of interest? So this is something that, again, all surveyors do, of course, and you have to do it and declare it. So even something that might not be a direct conflict, like another one of your colleagues has been instructed for the same case, which is obvious, but conflict can be something more not as straightforward. For example, you might have been the superintendent a couple of years back and have some other knowledge of this vessel which you are not supposed to have. So things like that should be declared, and then it's for the claims handler to decide whether they would want to proceed with you as a surveyor or not. Also, do you have the capacity to do it? So if you are a small firm or self-employed surveyor, you might have other appointments, so you need to have, you might have other commitments, so you need to kind of understand and let who is instructing you know that you have another commitment in whatever time or date, and you will have to be there for that. So it is for them, again, to decide whether to kind of instruct you or somebody else. When you get on board, of course, first of all, is when you identify yourself to the master to advise him on whose behalf you're attending. Then identify other surveyors and lawyers on board, because there might be a lot of them, especially, like I said, in complicated casualties. You might have a lot of surveyors on board doing all sorts of things and asking for all sorts of documents. So when you have, then you should let the master know of what you would want from him in terms of documents, in terms of survey requirements, and what would you need to see. And then depending on the circumstances, it will be great if you see that the master struggles with the situation to even support him, because like I said, a lot of the seafarers, they're not experienced with casualty scenarios, so being overwhelmed by different types of surveyors and lawyers at the same time is something that not everybody is used to. So you might need to assist the master in this respect, and even contact us and say that the master requires further input from the club, perhaps. Something that you should be aware when you write your reports is legal privilege. Obviously, I'm not by far the best person to tell you about legal privilege, but the concept is different depending on the jurisdiction you're operating it in. And in general, however, you should consider your reports as not being privileged. So everything you write in your report could be shared with the opposing party, and could in some cases even become public. So that is why you should avoid commenting on liability. So this is something that the lawyers are there for. So restrict yourselves to the facts unless asked to give an opinion on causation. You shouldn't be volunteering information to authorities or third parties. At the end of the day, you are attending on board on behalf of the owners if you're appointed by their P&I Club. And that is that. You should not be willingly volunteering information that you're not supposed to. Beware of the changing circumstances. So sometimes situation might quickly change, and something that starts as sometimes an ordinary condition survey, during which, for example, the ship is taking bunkers, might quickly change into a pollution incident. So in this case, just common sense is the thing. For me, instead of continuing with what you're doing, you should be really picking the phone and talking to us. And this is something that I've been always insisting on, for the surveyors to have direct contact with me when I'm appointing surveyors or whoever is appointing them. So if there is something, pick up the phone and let us know of the current situation. Know when you need to ask for assistance. So like I said, situation changes. So it might start as something that you are the right person for, but might develop quickly, and you might need further assistance or input from another expert. And of course, always observe local laws and regulations, because the last thing P&I Club needs is to kind of get the surveyors that they send in trouble with the local authorities. Where things can go wrong. Just excuse me for a quick second. Sorry. Where things can go wrong. Of course, not performing to the expected standards of professionalism, as something that the P&I clubs would consider. Acting beyond authority or competence. This very much builds upon what I've said in the previous slide. Acting beyond the scope of your instructions, failure to honestly declare qualifications and experience, interfering with ship's operations. So we for the surveys that we do on the loss prevention side, at least, we always try to make sure that the attending surveyors is well aware of the constraints on board and what they need to do in order not to interfere with the ship's operations. Breaching laws, any law and custom in the port where you are is another thing. Obviously, things like fraud, bribery, you might get intimidated. Sometimes it is always personal risk is something that I put at the end, but this is something that you should always consider. And at the end of the day, this is your utmost priority, really, your own safety before everything else. And of course, this is my kind of the last slide, the elephant in the room that I've said, COVID-19. It hit everybody hard, but our surveyors have been hit probably most hard in the industry. A lot of them rely on us to provide them with surveys, and unfortunately we have done less and less surveys due to all sorts of issues, travel restrictions being one of them. And what we are doing at the moment, I know my colleagues in claims, they have struggled also a lot, even for large casualties, to send their preferred surveyors or whoever they want to send on board on the location where the ship is, just because of the various restrictions. We've managed to overcome this so far. So there is a lot going on in terms of the remote assistance that the surveyors will give to some local surveyors that are recommended by the correspondent, or in terms of us in doing loss prevention surveys, we've scaled back a lot of this work. And at the moment, so I've only restarted doing condition surveys in the last couple of months, 2 months. I think I started in September, so hopefully there will be some more surveys coming up. But so far, it's been a difficult year for everybody. In terms of condition surveys, like I said in the beginning, when we stopped doing them, we started something called self-assessment that we offered our members. So they would complete the condition survey form themselves and then send us copies of some of their documents and class records, so on and so forth, that they do, and we will assess the ship that way. But so these kind of self-assessment we have only done to postpone the condition surveys. Hopefully now the things will start improving and we'll see a lot more development in the next few months. And that's it from me. Do let me know if there are any questions, and I will now stop sharing my screen.
Petar, thank you very much. Very enlightening. I hope very helpful to those guys who are online and those who will pick this up on catch up later. Is there any questions anybody wants to ask? And perhaps whilst I'm waiting for a question or two to come in, can I ask you something?
Yeah.
We opened the start today with remote surveys. And I think it's fair to say the jury is still out on remote surveys, although class, as we've discussed or found out, are doing an awful lot of them. What's the club's view on remote surveys? Do you have an opinion or a view?
Oh, we definitely consider that. So what we, like I said, at the moment, what we are doing with the self-assessment is, well, it's not really a remote survey, but it's the best we thought we could manage. So we can't really compare the clubs with the classification societies in terms of technical resources that they have. So for us, we decided that organizing a remote survey and getting all the systems in place to kind of make sure that there is no there are no cybersecurity breaches, for example, there are no issues with the data that's being shared. It's something that will cost us a lot more that we are willing to kind of contribute to this effort at the moment. So we decided, instead of doing remote surveys, to just do self-assessments and rely on the members to do the survey for us, plus the documentation, copies of documentations that we've asked them to submit. And then based on that, we kind of, if everything is in order, we can accept the ship for entry and then postpone the survey, and hopefully the things will start improving soon, and we will complete those surveys.
I think COVID-19, of course, has driven that demand, I suppose. I mean, that's the reality of it. And
yeah,
some people have had all sorts of challenges getting on board ships this year, and so on, and increased PPE and what have you. So
absolutely, increased expenses. So again, this is something that we considered, and all the surveyors that we use, we've told them that on the loss prevention side, at least, yeah, they should not be shy to factor that in the quote that they're giving us.
Yeah, yeah. Petar, thank you. I don't have any questions that have come in via chat. So can I just say thank you, big thank you to you, and thank you to the club for getting this all together. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much for inviting us.
No, and I hope to see you online again soon at some event or other.
Will do. Will do. Thank you.
Hello, Mike.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hello. This is Maurice Pickles here. Can you hear me?
Hello, Maurice. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Yes. Hi there. Peter, I have one question for you, and I apologise in advance if I missed it. When you were talking about your kind of your ad hoc surveyors and keeping a database, etc., how do you work with the data protection regulations? As I say, please forgive me if I missed it, but I just wrote that down about keeping people's information, etc. How do you manage to do that?
Well, we have quite a robust GDPR regulations in place. So we all the information, personal information that we have is password protected. We don't share it with anybody externally, and we have some robust processes.
Good stuff. Okay. Yeah, I thought, yeah.
I mean, it's not just surveyors. We handle quite a lot of personal data related, especially if you think about personal injuries. There is a lot more kind of critical data related there when we have records for example, medical records for individual people, and this is something that we really are looking at and have designed robust processes to make sure that nothing goes wrong.
Yeah. Okay, Peter, thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Maurice.
Thank you very much, Petar, and good luck to you, and we'll catch up soon.
Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
So, Maurice, it falls to you then to bring Fest 3 to an end.
Yeah, now, please forgive me a moment while I get my share screen. Is this going to work? This one here, perhaps?
That's looking promising.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Slideshow.
Yep.
From beginning.
That's the one. Oops.
There.
Fantastic. We're a few minutes ahead of time, but I think in the interest of cracking on, we should probably crack on. So if you're good to go.